Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Sunday that's keeping all the weather folks busy. And we're having quite an interesting day here where I am on Long Island because we had temperatures that were holding right around 30 to 32 for till about, I don't know, maybe 11:30, 12 o'clock. Then we jumped up into the mid 30s and changed over to rain. And then in the last hour, we went back over to sleet and wet snow, and now it's sleet and rain, and you can see the temperatures here. The wind coming in from the east and southeast now, right along the shore. So we've got some warmer air that's penetrating the low levels, and the temperatures are rising. They're above freezing at all the reporting stations to the east. Still some pockets below 32. New York City temperatures around 34. You can see where the freezing line is in New Jersey, basically right along Route 78. And it's 30 or less as you go into the Hudson Valley and in through Connecticut. Snowing pretty hard over parts of the Hudson Valley at the moment when I was looking at the observations, especially in and around Poughkeepsie to about Danbury in Connecticut, and then all along Route 84 and points northward. You've got the below freezing temperatures also extending into eastern Pennsylvania, and even some pockets below freezing, near or below freezing inland, down to about Route 195 in New Jersey. We still have winter weather advisories up along the coast, but the high wind watch takes precedent over what's being shown graphically here. And we have the winter storm warnings continuing north of Route 84. Here's the latest radar, and that back edge is making some pretty fast progress across New Jersey. It looks like the precipitation has come to an end in northwest New Jersey. We still have it along the coast. It's rain down in South Jersey, and this is all snow up through here. The rain snow line is somewhere in that vicinity here, I guess, and this whole area here. Let me just get a different color so it'll look better. So the black area, all of this is heavy snow, and we've got snow here, moderate to heavy snow in bands just outside of that. But this is all moving fairly quickly to the east northeast, and it should be out before too long. So let's take a look at what's going to be happening first in the short range. And I'm going to start with the HRRR model and give you a view of that. We'll get really close. And then I'm going to widen out because we're going to talk about what may or may not happen down the road. But this is the latest HRRR model. Is it? No, this is the latest HRRR model. Okay, and we are at now just about coming up on 2 o'clock Eastern time, and you can see the precipitation. It looks like the HRRR is just a little bit slow. Maybe it's about an hour behind in terms of what it's showing, what's actually showing up on the radar. But there's still going to be some snow and sleet for another couple of hours, especially in Connecticut. It looks like it continues. The sleet line gets up almost to Route 84 and then starts dropping back as the snow ends, and the low is right out here, begins to move southeast of Cape Cod. And again, the difference between this and the other day, they're not exactly alike, but there are similarities in terms of how this evolved. And the difference between this and the last event for this area is the fact that in the last event, the intensification process took place down in here, and we had the low move out and intensify as it moved to the northeast. So the result is that a band of heavy snow broke out. I have it actually drawn. I overdrew it, but the real band of heavy snow set up right in that second circle there. And this time around, that intensification process really doesn't take place until after midnight tonight, when the low is swinging north and northwestward up into the Gulf of Maine. So the area that really catches it in terms of the intensification this time is basically from near or just north of Boston, northeastward into coastal New Hampshire and Maine. They're going to get hit very hard with the heavy snow from the developing storm. And then the other result will be, as the night wears on, and certainly during the day tomorrow, we're going to have a really tightening pressure gradient here. So, high pressure to the southwest and low pressure to the northeast. Big pressure change in this area here over a relatively small distance, and that means the pressure gradient is very tight, and that results in some very strong winds. So everything on that respect seems to be on course. I'm going to now, let's jump to the longer range and see what we have in store for the week. So we'll go to the GFS model first. And there's our storm now off the New England coast. We've got precipitation in the southwest, some snow and showing up in parts of New Mexico, rain into Texas. The snow in New Mexico probably elevation driven to some extent. And then you have a low that's going to move out of the western Gulf of Mexico. But at the same time, you've got this very strong upper air and surface system that's dropping southeastward out of Canada and heading toward the Maine coast. And there's your southern system. And you see the two systems are basically separate. So you don't get anything on this from the GFS. It has all the energy in the north. The south just kind of gets squashed away and then moves away to the northeast. And after that, this is cold air here at the end of the week, but that pulls out. And once it pulls out, we're going to see warmer air across just about the entire United States except the west. There are a couple of big systems. There are several systems that are going to be coming into the western states. There's one that comes in on Thursday, and you can see it here with some snows up in the northern Rockies and in the Pacific Northwest. Then a strong low drives into San Francisco with some heavy rains down all the way into the Baja Peninsula. Snows in eastern California in the mountains and up into Nevada and Utah with some rain in the mix too, because there's not a whole lot of cold air. Then another storm comes into the west. And in the meantime, here in the east, it's relatively warm. So the only thing that might keep it from getting too warm is the occasional backdoor front that might try to sneak down. But pretty much into next week for about 4 or 5 days, it looks very warm. And then one of those that western system that comes in moves across, and the GFS wants to make a nice storm here going up into western New York or up toward Toronto. I don't know, in terms of the exactness of this, I'm not so sure yet, but we'll see. And then after that, the model does try to turn the atmosphere colder as we go into the last week of February and into the beginning of March. So I know there's a lot of people, they seem to look at these 3 or 4 day warm-ups. They want to proclaim that winter is over. Those are the same people that proclaimed winter is over 2 weeks ago before we had the first major storm on Thursday, and now this weather system for today. So you know what? You need to stop it, okay? Deal with the weather as it develops and not be so focused on what's going out 2 or 3, 4, 5 weeks from now. And let's look at the European model. You like how I pontificate, just kind of sneak it in there? Let's look at the European model today with regard to this system in the east for later this week, which, again, I think really it's not going to be a threat. The European, here's our first storm, really wraps it up into the Gulf of Maine and then moves it out. Here's that northern system dropping down. Here's the system in the Gulf. And you can see how this northern system really kind of dominates the flow here in the eastern states. That southern system is there, and then it all kind of merges into one east of the New England coast. So there might be another big snow for coastal Maine and New Hampshire here and over toward Nova Scotia with that one. And then the big warm-up occurs. The models are pretty good about showing that. Now, again, the only thing is at this point, when we go into Monday and Tuesday, there is a high that builds down from the north and creates an onshore flow. So that will probably mitigate how warm it actually gets, especially along coastal areas. And when we look at the upper air, which I want to take a look at, that's very important. Let's go to the wider North America view. And there you can see Big Ridge here in the east build. So you've got, here's our weather system for today and tomorrow. Here's the one that comes in on Wednesday, Thursday, and that's the last one. And you see the problem is with this is that while you do have the sort of the signature blocking setup here by Wednesday with a low out at 50 degrees north and 50 degrees west, if the blocking were strong enough, this low would sit here and force this to go underneath it. Okay, so if you have this 50-50 low, you've got this block, okay, and you've got this upper low. This can't go east. It wants to go east, but it can't. So it would try to dive. Now I'm exaggerating here, but it would try to dive southeastward. But what the models can insist on, and I think it's correct, is that 50-50 low pulls out. You see how it lifts up and out? So that opens the door for this to move east rather than dive southeastward. And that's why we're not going to get a major storm out of this. And then that ridge, that's the last one, is that ridge builds in the east. And that allows it to warm up for a few days. Now, let's look at, I want to look at the GFS long range because we can go out a little bit further. And here we have it now. We're in, days 11 and 12. And you've got this, a lot of above normal heights across Canada. So it's warm. There's a ridge that builds east-west over Labrador. And you've got, this complex upper air storm. The jet stream here is pretty far to the south. Let's draw it in for you. So, you have this really strong jet here to the south. Here's your, your the displaced upper lows to the south. And then you've got this blocking up to the north. So it's if you had enough cold air, you could have problems with this. But that may wind up being an issue. Looking at the profiles at the surface, because once you warm it up, you have to work at it to get it cold again. And as we work it out toward the longer term, I mean, I'm not sure how this is all going to play out, because the upper air is still pretty messy. But you've got all these active weather systems coming into the west. You do have some semblance of a polar flow trying to set up, though it's weak, and you've got these vortexes here in southern Canada. So I think that argues for the fact of some colder air returning as we head toward the last 4 or 5 days of February. Now, how it all ultimately plays out in terms of specifics remains to be seen. But as always with these things, it's complicated, and it's a lot of fun to look at, I think, and a lot of fun watching it change from day to day. Let's take a look at the Canadian model today, and I want to show you, because it handles that system for Thursday just a little bit differently, and we'll back it up. So here we have today's, and that moves out. So there's your upper low. Now we have that system coming down from the north, and we have that system in the south. It kind of wants to bring it close, but again, that northern system is problematic in terms of its position. And the fact that it's not diving far enough. It's not only not diving down, but it's diving down, but it's doing it too far to the east. It needs to do it. It would need to really kind of do it back in this area here. Instead it's doing it over here, and that does not bode problematic for a system off the mid-Atlantic coast, for example. Instead, you're going to wind up with some kind of low up in the Gulf of Maine. So although the Canadian probably leaves the door open slightly for something to happen. And when we look at the upper air on the Canadian, you can see where the trough is. Now you see how that upper low is lined up right along the coast, right here, right along 75 west. That's about 5 degrees too far to the west. It's lined up there. You really want it lined up here near 80 west, because then your trough axis is like this, okay? And your upper low is here. And if you really have strong enough blocking, then that upper low is forced to go southeastward. That, again, does not appear to be happening. So there's the Canadian's position. Here's the European's position. You see the European is actually even further east than the Canadian, and the GFS is almost in the same spot as the European. So the European and the GFS agree. The Canadian leaves the door slightly ajar for some westward adjustment. But at this point, I think we're going to have to really defer to the way the models are shaping up with this. It just doesn't seem to me like there's going to be any kind of problem here once we get rid of this storm system for early this week. Latest posts are up on the website, meteorologistjoecioffi.com. And also, if you like my YouTube videos, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. Hit the little red button on the side, notifications when new videos come out. And for specific forecasts for New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, and the Hudson Valley, my app would have come in very handy today. So you can download my app and subscribe to my forecast. It's just 99 cents. There's a little card that shows up on the top of the video there with the link, and you can go and you can download it for iPhones or for Androids. So everybody have a great rest of your Sunday. If you're out and about in the Northeast, be extra cautious. It's just nasty out between the sleet, the freezing rain, and the heavy snows that are going onto the north and eventually to the northeast, up into northern New England. Just be extra cautious on your drive, please, and be safe. And we will update you tomorrow.